September 11th, 1973. Under orders from General Augusto Pinochet, an orchestra of sound and fury erupts in the skies and streets of Santiago, Chile. It is efficient, it is brutal, it is very well organized. Marcela Duran witnesses it all.
The city was cut off. Military planes started bombing the presidential palace. Tanks came out in the streets, so it was a coup.
The army makes sweeping arrests, locking up thousands of people in 2 stadiums. Within 24 hours, President Salvador Allende is dead. Cabinet colleagues are shipped to isolated prisons where many of them are tortured. Thousands of supporters know they too are in the crosshairs. They must act quickly to stay alive.
It became very clear that Claudio, my husband, was in danger because the majority of the deans and associate deans of the university had been taken to prison. Prison at that point was a stadium, and there were horrible things that happened there.
Telephones hum with the news of possible hiding places.
Through acquaintances of my parents, they said to me, look, we think that you can maybe go to the Canadian embassy. They have taken a couple of Chileans there.
But in Canada, External Affairs Minister Mitchell Sharp appears unaware of the human crisis playing out in Chile.
Very few people have said they want to come to Canada.
This we were told, so we can't take you to Canada. But we could take you to another country.
In Canada, a young project officer for the Canadian International Development Agency is reading with increasing alarm about the plight of people at Chile's national stadium. Bob Thomson.
I happen to know from reading Le Monde that the people being held in the stadium were being tortured and shot.
But he was also reading something else. Cables from Canada's ambassador to Chile, Andrew Ross.
The cables from the Canadian Embassy in Santiago reporting on the coup were floating around as part of the background that we needed in terms of our daily work. And so I read the cables. Reprisals and searches have created panic atmosphere, particularly affecting expatriates, including riffraff of Latin American left to whom Allende gave asylum. The country was on the verge of anarchy, and armed forces offered only viable temporary alternative.
But this was not the story Thomson had been hearing.
What was going on in the stadium was that there were hundreds, if not thousands, of people there who were being tortured, killed. Trucks were coming and going with prisoners and leaving with bodies. I made the decision. I made the photocopies in the office. So I did the classical, put them into a brown envelope.
Thomson strides down Ottawa's Spark Street and hands the documents to the NDP. The following week, the House of Commons explodes.
The leaking of private dispatches of this kind has an enormous effect upon the way other people deal with us.
Many Canadians had pleaded with External Affairs to take a good, close look at what was happening in Chile, and nothing was happening.
But in the Canadian embassy in Santiago, a diplomat is quietly booking a plane to take Marcela Duran's family and 12 others to Canada.
3 days before we left, or 4 days before, the ambassador told us that we could actually come to Canada.
Bob Thomson's life is also about to change dramatically.
I was caught, and I was confronted with a letter of resignation from the president of CIDA.
Thomson was just 28 years old at the time, deemed a security risk. He would never work for the government again. But he's proud of what he did 40 years ago. 7,000 Chilean refugees eventually came to Canada.
We really have to thank Bob Thomson for affecting history. His brave action really, in the end, produced a change in immigration policy. The refugee category was created.
Years later, while attending a conference, someone recounted Bob Thomson's story.
Yeah, some guy leaked cables from the ambassador supporting the coup, and the churches got really pissed off. And they brought 7,000 of us to Canada as refugees. And as it happened, the woman sitting next to me knew my story and said, well, that's the guy. And he stood up and he walked around the table and he threw his arms around me. I mean, that had to be, I think I can safely say that was the most emotional moment of my life.
Bob Thomson, winner of the 2013 Integrity Award.